Good morning. Thank you, worship team. That was beautiful. And hey, I want to thank you. If you were here yesterday on the work day, I was not, and I hate missing those, but I could not make it yesterday. And so if you were here, thank you for making the place better and taking care of what God has given us. So this morning, we are going to finish 1 Samuel. We've been in 1 Samuel since September with a break, at Christmas time. But this is going to be week 18. And Pastor Bo put this Trusting God thing together for me in January because what I had just wasn't good. And he put trusting God in the graphic. And I looked at it and I thought, no, it's kind of general. But I was telling him this morning that usually when he picks something, I go with it because it turns out it was the right thing. And for this one is no exception. Trusting God is in every chapter of 1 Samuel. God is asking his people to trust him. And they say, oh, we want a human king, right? Hannah cannot have a child, and she has to trust God. Hophni and Phinehas, they want more to eat, so they plunge the fork into the sacrifice that the people have brought and take what's not theirs because they don't trust God. It's all about, do we trust or don't we trust? It's in every chapter. So very interesting to me, that theme. So today, week 18, lessons from David and Saul. Faithfulness on David's side and justice on Saul's side. We get lessons from both of them. And Saul's reign comes to an end with the end of this book. And his reign has been pretty much a catastrophe. It's just been horrible. For the first of Israel's kings, he just is a complete and utter dismal failure. Other than that, he was okay. But they could have kept God as their true king, but they didn't. So, the big picture of this morning. In chapter 30, God blesses David with victory over the Amalekites. The Amalekites are the ones that Saul was supposed to utterly wipe out, but he didn't. He brought back some of their stuff when he shouldn't have, and that's what got him in trouble to begin with. And so there's going to be victory over them by David and the return of the goods and the families that they stole in Ziklag. God is faithful to David. In chapter 31, Saul and his sons, they die. God is just with Saul. His justice comes out with Saul. Sometimes we wonder, when will the evil get their just desserts? And Saul gets his in chapter 31. And in both we see God's faithfulness and justice. And in that, we realize we can trust God. We can trust him. There's not a lot of things you can trust in the world today. Not a lot of people in your life that you can trust. Just when you think you can trust somebody, you can't. And they fail you. And for some people, they'll literally sit in the chair in their favorite room in their house, and there isn't anybody on the planet that they feel like they can trust. And if that's you this morning, let me tell you, you can trust God. There's one you can trust. He's got it all covered. He's got it all covered. Doesn't mean we're going to have an easy life, but God is one that we can trust. And so in these final chapters, we learn from 3 of David's character qualities and 1 of Saul's life experiences, because Saul didn't have any character qualities that we can learn from. So we're just going to learn from the end of his life. So the first character quality of David is we learn from David's faithfulness. David was told by Achish You can't come, you can't do battle with me. Take your men and go back to Ziklag. So it says in verse 1 of the next chapter that David and his men reached Ziklag on the third day. Now the Amalekites had raided the Negev, the south, and Ziklag. They had attacked Ziklag and burned it, and had taken captive the women and everyone else in it, both the women and everyone else in it, both young and old. They killed none of them, but carried them off as they went on their way. When David and his men reached their hometown, they found it destroyed by fire, and their wives and sons and daughters taken captive. So David and his men wept aloud until they had no strength left to weep. We remember the fires out in Southern California, particularly Pacific Palisades. And when people would come back and all their stuff was burned. Their house was burned and all their stuff remained in it, and that was burned. And for most of them, thankfully, their families weren't in the homes. They were able to get out in time. Many didn't, but the vast majority got out in time. This is what happened to these people. They came back to their hometown. The place was destroyed. All their stuff had been taken, and their families were gone. Their lives were destroyed. We read it and we kind of read through the verses quickly, but imagine if your house was burned and your family was gone and your house was just a shell. The stuff had been taken out and torched and your family's gone. You'd pretty much say your life is over, right? Well, David's two wives, verse 5, had been captured. And in verse 6, David was greatly distressed because the men were talking about stoning him. Each one was bitter in spirit because of his sons and daughters. But David found strength in the Lord his God. That is a key phrase in this entire book. David found strength in the Lord his God. Now, imagine where he is. He's shot. His potential to lead is gone. His wives are gone, his family is gone, and all of his guys are in revolt. And they're talking about stoning him because he's such an idiot. He leads us in this thing and he leads us right into the lair of the enemy. We come back and everything is gone. But somehow, how is it? I mean, imagine your home is burned and destroyed, and then all the church people are blaming you, and all the town folk are blaming you. They're talking about stoning you. You would have to be like the mayor of Newton, and I don't know who that is right off the top of my head, so I don't mean to talk about the mayor of Newton in such a way, but if you were the mayor of Newton and you had this revolt, it would be pretty bad. That was David's situation, but somehow he found strength in the Lord his God. How would you find strength in God? Would you? Is your faith strong enough? Do you have a faith-filled heart that even when things look so dire, you would still find strength in God? You would know that, hey, it looks bad, but God is somehow going to see me through this. Verse 7, then David, he goes to the priest. He goes in a spiritual direction. And he says, bring me the ephod. You remember some years before that, he was like, strap on your sword. Well, now he's saying, bring me the ephod. The ephod was this breastplate that had the stuff in it whereby God would reveal himself in an answer, usually a yes or no, right or wrong, stay or go, a binary type of a way through these. It doesn't really explain what they are, whether that's lots or dice or whatever they are. Abiathar brought it to him, and David inquired of the Lord, should I pursue this raiding party? Will I overtake them? Pursue them, he answered. You will certainly overtake them and succeed in the rescue. Now, again, here's where it doesn't really explain. Does David hear the voice? Does God speak to him at that point? Is this just the message in so many words from God through the I think it's the Urim and Thummim? We don't know, but he says, yeah, go after him. So what do we learn from David's faithfulness? There is strength to be found in the Lord our God. There is strength. David found strength in a horrible situation, and so can we. When we're down and out, God has strength for us. And to be faith-filled is to be faithful. To have faith and step forward, knowing that God is somehow going to come through for me, that is faithfulness. Faithfulness maintains a close relationship with God. To know God is to have faith in God. And then David's heart for God was faith-filled and open to his voice. David made it a practice, we see through the Psalms. David made it a practice to do the things that brought his heart close to the heart of God. To do things like and we have to, like spend time with other believers. Spend time with other Christians who build us up. We have to listen to maybe some good podcasts. You got to search, but there's some really good ones out there. There's a couple that I listen to. There's only two, actually. I need to find another one because I'm running out of episodes, but there's two that I'll listen to on a Sunday morning that get me ready for church. I don't want to listen to anything else on a Sunday morning than these two, because they just help me get in tune with God in a different way. Prayer and scripture reading and meditation and worship. These are all things that we practice to develop a faith-filled heart. David did that. Again, he writes about that. He couldn't do what he did and get to that moment and be able to turn to God as quickly and decisively as he did had he not been doing the things that would bring him close to God. I think that's why the scriptures talked about him as a man after God's own heart. So we learn from David's faithfulness, but we also learn from David's justice. Justice means doing what is right, having the right thing happen. Verse 17, it says, David went after them and he fought them from dusk until the evening of the next day. And none of them got away except 400 young men who rode off on camels and fled. So the Amalekites are being preserved yet again for future battles. David recovered everything the Amalekites had taken, including his wives. Nothing was missing, young or old, boy or girl, plunder, or anything else they had taken. David brought everything back. So now what was he out? A burned village. Their homes were burned. But he brought all their stuff. It was almost like, that's actually better. Take the stuff out before you burn it. That way you still got all your stuff. They had all their stuff. They had all their family. He brought everything and everyone back. Then David came to the 200 men who had been too exhausted to follow him, and that was in the verses we didn't look at. They were left behind at the Besor Valley. They came out to meet David and the men with him. As David and his men approached, here's what David said to them. He asked how they were doing. David and his men had just come back from the battle. These guys were hanging out, but he's concerned about them. How are you guys doing? But all the evil men and the troublemakers among David's followers, they said, well, they didn't go with us. We're not going to share with them the plunder we recovered. However, each man may take his wife and children and go. We don't want to have to care for any of your wives or kids. You can take them. But all the stuff we recovered, the Amalekites came and they plundered Judah, but they also plundered the Philistines, and they had all of this stuff, all of their stuff, the stuff they took from David and other communities around there, and then the stuff they took from the Philistines. They had a lot of stuff. And basically David's men are saying, hey, this is all ours. You guys didn't come and fight with us. You don't need any of it. But that wasn't David's heart. David had a heart of justice. David replied, no, my brothers, you must not do that with what the Lord has given us. He has protected us and delivered into our hands the raiding party that came against us. Who's going to listen to what you say? You won't have any credibility if you do this, if you keep all the spoils for yourself. Remember when Saul fought the Amalekites and he came back and he kept stuff? He kept stuff. And God judged him for it because God said, destroy it all. But David comes back. David's not keeping stuff. David's sharing and giving. He says the share of the man who stayed with the supplies. Now he frames those guys who stayed behind, not in they were just hanging out, but in a useful way. Hey, they actually stayed back and they protected our supplies. So when we got back, all of our stuff wasn't looted. And the share of those guys is to be the same as that of him who went down to the battle. All will share alike. David made this a statute and ordinance for Israel from that day to this. So we see David's justice. For David to be just was to do what is right. And just because all of our moms said this, just because you can do something, Jeffrey, doesn't mean you should, Jeffrey. My mom and my sisters call me Jeffrey. Nobody else calls me that. But I was always in trouble when my mom called me Jeffrey. Just because you can do something, if all your friends jump off, yeah, okay, Mom. Thanks, Mom. I've heard it a million times, Mom. Justice spreads what is right out to many. And David shows us what to do with power and wealth. You share it. You share it. Justice does the right thing when it comes into possession of a lot. It doesn't keep it, but it shares it. And we learn that generosity promotes justice. Being generous, you would think, well, you didn't fight for it, so we should keep it. That's justice. But actually, generosity actually promotes justice, which is the next thing we learn from David. We learn from his generosity. In verse 26, it says, when David reached Ziklag, he sent some of the plunder to the elders of Judah who were his friends, saying, here is a gift for you from the plunder of the Lord's enemies, the Amalekites and the Philistines, the Lord's enemies. This is all the stuff we got from them. We're going to share it with you. And then the toughest part of the passage to read, these next verses, David sent it, but I want to read it because I think it's important. David was thinking about all these different people in these places. He sent it to those who were in Bethel, Ramoth Negev, and Jatir, to those in Aror, Sifmoth, Eshtemoa, and Rakal, to those in the towns of the Jerahmeelites, and the Kenites, to those in Hormah, Bor Ashan, Athak, and Hebron, and to those in all the other places where he and his men had roamed. Generosity is a beautiful quality in David. He just looked around and he shared and he took this stuff and he spread it around. He didn't keep it for himself. When you come into our lobby, you see those two yes we cans, be generous and help the community, whatever it says there. And you guys have come and you dropped food off. And every so often, I get a thank you from Cheryl Hayton, who is the one, she's the pastor's wife at Grace, but she runs that food pantry. And here's what she wrote just this week. She said, I wanted to update you and Community Heights about the things happening at the Grace Food Pantry. It's been a busy 3 months. The number of people coming in for assistance continues to grow. So this is January through March. For the first 3 months of 2025, we have been able to help 512 families and 1,413 household members. It's a blessing that we can help so many people, but it's also sad that so many need help. We appreciate so much your partnership with us by collecting food at your church and delivering it to us to help each of these families. It truly makes a difference. And then she shares what they need right now, which is good to know. We could use personal care items, such as toothbrushes, toothpaste, soap, shampoo, razors, toilet paper, etc. We could also use some can openers, so we have some homeless people who could use these things. We could use fresh produce whenever it's available. Community Heights was extremely helpful last year. We're hopeful that you can help us in this area again. Thank you for your continued support of helping us, and this is their mission, extend God's grace to our community by offering hope and help to those in need. God bless you, Cheryl. I don't know how long we've been doing that. I'm going to guess 2 to 3 years, maybe. But if you've kind of forgotten that those cans are out there because they're there all the time, and recently I was at the store and thought, wow, I have not picked up anything for the food pantry in a while, because I think I end up going to the store grocery-wise as much as my wife, and so sometimes I'll grab stuff when I'm there. But those are the things that they need. They need stuff over in the personal care aisles. But I just want to encourage you to be generous. I think the more and more our church is generous, then God uses us. He continues to use us because we can only give what we get. And I think if we stop giving, we'll stop getting from God. I think that's true for us personally, but it's also true for us as a church. And speaking about giving, last week was the 5th Sunday offering, and this money is going to open another school in the Philippines where these young kids who otherwise wouldn't be educated and wouldn't hear about Jesus get to do both. And I actually called her on one of the apps, and we were talking from here to the Philippines, 13 hours away. It was crazy. It was like we're standing next to each other. So I got to talk to Melissa. Her and I are going to talk again this week, and I'm going to record that so that you can get a report from her. Maybe we'll show some of it next Sunday morning. But you guys, you gave over $16,000 toward this $40,000 goal that they had. And let me tell you something. Generations from now, there are going to be Christians in the Philippines who would look back 50 years ago and say, my grandfather went to this school. And that's how my parents came to know Jesus. And that's how I came to be a Christian. The investment you guys made last week is going to ripple for eternity. And it's a huge honor and blessing to be able to do that with Mark and Melissa, who are marketplace missionaries, and she'll tell you this, but there's an alliance ministry there that they work with. There's a main church that has a school, and they work with that. And then as marketplace missionaries, they then kind of leverage, on their one hand, the church and the school, and they hang on to that while they move stuff in the community, while they plant more schools and use the resource here and source it out in more places. And this thing called KOZ, and I don't know what that stands for, but Cause International, is what this marketplace ministry couple serving into the Alliance are leveraging through this Filipino church and school to reach out into the least reached places in that area. So you're going to hear more about that, but that's called being generous. God prospers us not to raise our standard of living, but to raise our standard of giving. Randy Alcorn wrote that in his book, The Treasure Principle. And every time we take a step in the direction of generosity, we move from fear to love. Henry Nouwen, the philosopher and Christian author. So what do we learn from David's generosity? Well, generosity is a willingness to share God's blessing with others. Generosity is a great character quality. Generosity says, oh, if things aren't the way I like them, I just get over myself. That's all right. I'm okay. I got everything I need. Generosity multiplies your joy. It's a whole lot more fun being generous. And when a kid, kids don't like to share because it's theirs. They got to go through that ownership rights thing. But then once they realize, hey, it's more fun, my happiness is multiplied when I share, then they start sharing all the time. And as adults, we know that our generosity is multiplied. And generosity, it just models the heart of God. But we're out of time. I am going to stop there, but I want to encourage you to look through 1 Samuel at your leisure and maybe read on some of the areas that we went over pretty quickly. And remember, like Hannah, who didn't have any children, and she had to go to God, and she had to believe. She had to trust God. Remember the people who decided they couldn't trust God. They wanted a king. Remember Samuel, who had to go to God and complain, and then hear from God, and then go to the people and just say, okay, this is the way it is, and God's given you a king, and if your king follows God, and if you follow God, then it's going to be okay. Samuel had to trust God. Jonathan had to trust God and still died with his dad in battle. David had to trust God. Saul should have trusted God, but he didn't. He could have. He could have. We're all still above ground and we're breathing, and we can trust God. I want to encourage you, no matter where you're at in your life, no matter what situation is going on in your life, trust God. He's the only one. He's the best one to trust. We can't even trust ourselves all the time, but we can trust God. Let's pray together. Father, thank you. Thank you for teaching us through these stories of Samuel and Saul and David and all of the other actors and players and seconds, all the bit part people in this story, God. Thank you for teaching us that all you're asking us to do is trust you. It's actually an honor and a pleasure. It's actually a joy. It's actually a blessing, God, for us to trust you. And yet, because of our selfish, independent nature, our sin, we often don't. So God, would you help us this week as we go from here? Would you help us to trust you? Not in just the silly things like where we're going to sit in the auditorium or what time the service is, but God, the really important things like how our family members are doing, about our job and its security, about our finances, about our friends and our neighbors. God, all the situations that may be troubling us today, God, would you help us to place our faith and trust in you? Give us faith-filled hearts to trust you. And God, help us as we go out from here today to be people of faith who love and serve others, who are generous, and who do what is right. In Jesus' name, amen.